In today's podcast episode, I am going to talk about analog horror and a favorite analog horror series of mine, Gemini Home Entertainment. Analog horror is a genre of internet horror visually presented in a way that makes it look like it's a haunted or cursed film and is usually treated as if it was a real event that has happened. This ties in with what an ARG is. ARG stands for Alternate Reality Game. These games are usually played through using analog horror with a combination of secret messages, clues, codes, and people also treat these games as if they were real, to solve the puzzle and find out what is happening in the story. What analog horror stories are there? There's a lot of analog horror stories made by people all over the internet. Mainly YouTube is used, but they take advantage of other internet platforms as well. To name a few, there's Local 58, Gemini Home Entertainment, The Smile Tapes, the Mandela Catalog, the Backrooms, and many, many more. I'll leave links to some stories if you ever want to check them out. For this podcast, I'm only going to go over one series, my favorite, Gemini Home Entertainment. I can't fit all of the tapes in here, so I'll just cover some of them and do a little analysis. Episode 1. World's Weirdest Animals. This tape is short. It is presented as an older tape of funny animals and their quirks. One of them is a fowl and one of them is an owl. Eventually in the tape, they introduce another kind of creature called a woodcrawler. Woodcrawlers apparently like to nest in the homes of large families, displaying multiple messages such as "You will hear screaming, they stole their voices." They then show a woodcrawler in a house. All you see is a large, black, long-legged creature slamming down from behind a doorway. The tape cuts to it being night, and you see people in that same house. But they look unnatural. Their faces are constantly adjusting and moving, and their walking is unnatural, and it's as almost if they are floating around. Eventually the cameraman is spotted and is charged by what appears to be a human male, but definitely isn't, and the tape cuts. Supposedly he was attacked. Tape 2, Storm Safety Tips. Storm Safety Tips is a tape made by Harbinge Technologies about what steps to take for a storm. Step 1 is simple. It's to reinforce your home. The second tip is to install a warning system conveniently made by them. Then to create a shelter. The shelter is rather odd though. The tape states that the shelter needs to be 18 by 10 square feet and have a large aluminum dome in the middle. This shelter is what you are directed to use during a storm. During this section of the tape has more weird statements, such as "Your home does not belong to you now." After the storm, the viewer is directed to check for anything alive inside of your home. The tape states that if you see lights in the distance, you need to get back into your bunker, while showing that exact scenario playing out. Now, one thing I didn't mention before, all of these tapes, they look like they came directly from the 80s, at least what I'd assume what it would look like in the 80s, maybe the 90s, I don't really know, wasn't alive. But these tapes are actually recorded by a real person supposedly, and this person is actually going through these scenarios in the moment. Except for episode 3. Episode 3 is a documentary type tape called The Deep Blue. This episode is presented as an educational tape on the wonders of our world's oceans. It's all normal, going over the Great Barrier Reef and different large phenomena in our oceans, until it gets to a point where the tape switches to quiet, no noise, and just a stale picture of the Mariana Trench, and states nothing can live in the Mariana Trench. It then cuts to the bottom as well. What we most likely can see is the Marianas Trench. It's empty and quiet until the camera moves and pans to this weird, long, floating creature with a light in the center and multiple tentacles floating below it, that at least hundreds of feet long. We suspect this is also a woodcrawler. A loud noise begins to play and the camera shakes, cutting into a plain static. At this point, the tapes get a little repetitive and can seem boring to those who don't know what to look for. So maybe you want to get something to do while watching these tapes, or something to watch the tapes with? Well, you can get a great deal using Honey to buy anything online. Honey can be downloaded as a web browser application and is simple. Let's say you're looking through an online store, like Amazon or Newegg. Well, guess what? Honey will automatically tell you the best deals on those sites, and even automatically find the best promo codes to save you money. Want a new TV? Use Honey. Looking for a display for your multiple uranium glass animals? Use Honey. Use Honey today to save your money. Just download under the Google Chrome store for free today. Well, moving on from that, you're probably wondering, how many of these tapes are there? Well, there's 18 episodes, a video game with 4 or 5 endings, and they even have a merch advertisement, and more channels. I cannot possibly go over the in-depth analysis with this storyline and the lore this horror channel gives to us. So now I'm going to analyze and just summarize a few things. First and foremost, we have the wood crawlers. Wood crawlers through this series are shown to be tricking people by screaming and acting completely unnatural. These beings can live in any environment. They are shown on land, in the air, and even under the water. They are tall, lanky creatures with multiple legs and a blob for a body. These creatures come from an extra planet in the solar system that was discovered by Gemini Home Entertainment, we assume, and is called the Iris. Thanks, Alexa. Which is quite literally a giant red eye, infecting other planets including our own, especially Neptune, which is the planet that Gemini Home Entertainment uses as its logo. There's another thing that came from the Iris. It's called nature's mockery, a plant or a plague that spreads instantly on anything it touches that's living. It causes hallucinations, sudden muscular paralysis, body disfigurement, and flesh decay in humans. You can actually find nature's mockery taken over someone's body in the game Lethal Omen. Nature's mockery will spread all over a person's body until they are completely unrecognizable. Then we have the Wretch. The Wretch is a bear infected due to the Iris seeing it as an inadequate sacrifice, as it desires a human sacrifice instead. It has absorbed the bodies of multiple human beings, turning it into a grotesque creature. One of the tapes states, "Do not answer the knocking at the door," while loud knocking plays in the background whilst they are in a cabin. It is revealed the knocking is the Wretch itself, and it will absorb anyone who answers it, and it only comes out at night. These are some examples of creatures we learn to deal with when watching the Gemini Home Entertainment tapes. And to summarize what all this is simple, Gemini Home Entertainment's connections and motives are unknown, but the motives of the Iris are clear. The Iris is slowly infecting our planet and others in the solar system, and we do not know how or why. Maybe it's just how nature is supposed to play out. Maybe it's just something much more wretched. Gemini Home Entertainment is a great example of analog horror and cosmic horror, and a favorite online series of mine. I hope you enjoyed this short analysis and summary podcast. Make sure not to touch nature's mockery on the way out. Good night.